Okay, I want to start right off this morning with something that our co-founder Charles Fillmore wrote all the way back in 1920. Here's what he says. Man is the power of God in action. The power to control his thinking is the highest gift given to man. There is a universal creative force that urges man forward to the recognition of the creative power of individual thought. That's from his book, Keep a True Lent. Now, you can agree with this statement or not, but there's no denying the fact that back in the day, this was a radical and a provocative notion. This idea that a human being is the power of God in action and that the individual thought has creative power. People in those days were ready to hear this. Like a person dying of thirst in the desert, they needed to hear this. They needed it because it was such a departure from the message that they were immersed in, the message that they were getting from every direction around them. Think about the world of Charles and Myrtle Fillmore during the 19th century, the world that they grew up in. The Enlightenment and the scientific method had culminated in the Industrial Revolution, which, for all of the good things it did, also had a shadow side. The Industrial Revolution had this dark side which treated human beings as just another cog in the giant economic machine. Anybody read any Charles Dickens? If you read just about anything by Charles Dickens, you will get a really good picture of just how dehumanizing Western culture had become in the 1800s. And in this country, cheap cotton was more important than human freedom. Native Americans were regarded as a mere nuisance to be swept out of the way. They stood in the way of the free land that European immigrants were supposed to have. Children were considered to be cheap and expendable labor back in those days. And the dominant religions, those who were supposed to be here to provide comfort, went right along with all of it. Religion told people in those days, and they still do to some extent, but they said that people were basically, you are worms in the dust. You're meant to grovel before a supreme being of the male gender, mind you, who may or may not, you never know, may or may not decide to condemn you to eternal torture. Just depends on how well you grovel and so on and so forth, right? Thinking wasn't the highest gift. Thinking was dangerous. People weren't supposed to think for themselves. Instead, they were expected to surrender their power and blindly follow the words of some authority figure, again, usually an elder male, or the Bible, Scripture. That was the world that Charles Fillmore grew up in. And it's pretty remarkable because he was, no doubt about it, he was a product of that world and an environment, but he wasn't a victim. He wouldn't conform to it. Somehow, he managed to avoid the kind of cultural conditioning that was so prevalent in those days. He avoided the indoctrination and became what I think we might fairly call a free thinker. Charles was not shackled by destructive conventional wisdom. So here's another radical statement that he made which defied that kind of destructive conventional wisdom. Here's his vision of God. He says, we must relieve our minds of these ideas of a personal God ruling over us in an arbitrary, man-like manner. God is mind. Mind evolves ideas. These ideas are evolved in an orderly way. The laws of mind are just as exact and undeviating as the laws of mathematics or music. To recognize this is the starting point in finding God. Pretty amazing. And that might still be controversial in some places today. I mean, God is mind. That operates according to exact and undeviating laws which evolve ideas. There's a trigger word for you, right? Evolution, still a bad word. Still a bad word in some places, in some circles today in our country, and the problem is that some of those circles and people are running our country. There was a congressman from Georgia who happens to be a high-ranking member on the House Committee on Science and Technology. Here he is. 2 years ago, he was quoted as saying that evolution, embryology, and the Big Bang are lies straight from the pit of hell. High-ranking member of the Science and Technology Committee. Wow. I don't know whether to laugh or cry when I hear that. And maybe there's a silver lining to this, because now he's running for Senate. So at least that'll get him off the Science and Technology Committee. But wow. So from the ridiculous, let's get back to the sublime, because I'm so grateful to people like Charles Fillmore who challenge us to question the claims of authority figures and Scripture and start to rely on our own experience of life that's based on that thinking nature that we have, the power of human thought, to really see and experience the value of human mind. And for Charles, what made that experience valuable and meaningful, that is our human experience of mind, what made that so valuable and meaningful to him is that it's part of something larger. We don't exist in a vacuum. God as mind and human beings as thinking individuals evolving from mind in an orderly and exact way. Orderly, exact, and yet independent and free. Sounds like a paradox, doesn't it? It is. Human beings are thinking individuals arising out of the orderly and exact laws of mind. The orderly and exact laws of the universe. What I like to call principle. So for Charles Fillmore, that makes us radically free instead of just cogs in a machine. Here's another quote. He says, "The thinking faculty makes you a free agent because it is your creative center. In and through this one power, you establish your consciousness, you build your world." Charles is pointing out a very important thing here with that statement. He's pointing out that principle is cooperative, not coercive, not fatalistic. So that means that we have great freedom and great responsibility. Great freedom, but not unlimited freedom. Great responsibility, but not total or unlimited responsibility. The universe doesn't give me freedom of choice when it comes to natural laws, when it comes to those exacting and unchanging laws of mind that he talked about earlier. It doesn't give me a choice in regard to those. If I take this pen and let go of it, it will fall down to the floor. It will not rise to the ceiling. 2 and 2, always going to equal 4. I don't get to choose. I don't get to make up my own facts. And with the 4th of July coming on Friday, I feel the need to quote one of our country's founders, John Adams, who said, and I love this quote here, he said, "Facts are stubborn things, and whatever may be our wishes, our inclinations, or the dictates of our passion, they cannot alter the state of facts and evidence." Unlike a certain congressman from Georgia, I don't get to make up my own facts or my own reality. And while I may be responsible for a lot of things that happen to me, I'm not responsible for everything. I'm not responsible for everything that happens to me in the sense that something in me causes it. I'm sorry, but I'm just not that powerful. Hate to pop your bubble, but I'm just not that powerful. There are accidents. Things happen to me, around me, that I did not intend or cause. Just watch the news sometime. One of the big stories in the news lately I've been seeing is all of the rain and the flooding that's been happening in Minnesota and the upper Midwest. Well, the residents of Minnesota didn't do anything or think anything that caused that to happen to them. They're not responsible in that sense. What they are responsible for, what were all responsible for ultimately is the way that we respond to the stuff like that that happens around us. What do we make of it? And this is where that notion of radical freedom comes in again. I'm free to choose how I respond to those things. There are times when things happen in our immediate vicinity, and our response, our almost automatic response, is fear or anger. Emotional stuff like that, it's automatic because that's kind of how we're wired. At some point in our evolution, it was more important to have those immediate reactions that we would use to either flee or fight, right? Take your pick. Emotional responses can be automatic. It's part of our biology, but there comes a point in our evolution, and we're well past that point. There comes a point in our evolution, sooner or later, where we get to choose whether we stay there or not, where we have to choose whether we stay with the automatic reaction or not. We can stay angry or fearful, which may be our initial automatic response, or we can decide, using the power of mind, the power of thought, to put something else in the place of a strong negative emotion. We can take compassionate action that's grounded in love and empathy and things like that. I think the reason that we value things like that, why we talk so much about love and compassion and empathy and things like that, is because deep down we know, it's part of our experience, we know that people are free to do otherwise. And they often do. So, yes, there are a lot of things that we can predict and control in this world, but it's the things that we can't predict or control that give us the greatest opportunity to demonstrate the very best of what it means to be human. To demonstrate those things that Charles Fillmore was talking about earlier. To show up as the power of God in action, controlling our thinking, that wonderful gift that we have. When things are out of control, that's when we have the opportunity to shine. For everything bad that happens in the world, whether it's a natural disaster or the result of human conduct, there are always, in every situation, a substantial number of people who are ready to respond with love, empathy, compassion. So how do we grow those numbers? Shouldn't that be our vision and our mission in the world? Each week we talk about co-creating a world that works for all. Well, we're not going to get too far in a world where human beings are still seen as cogs in an economic machine and pawns in a chess game that's being run by some wrathful deity up there, out there, wherever. We're not worms in the dust, and we're not consumers. I reject that word. I'm not a consumer. It's dehumanizing. I reject the word sinner. I refuse to call anyone illegal or illegitimate, because every single one of us is the power of God in action. And if we believe that, then all that other stuff goes out the window. All those words, as Charles Fillmore would say, are swept away as mere chaff, and something else takes its place, something that's empowering. Every single one of us is the power of God in action. And those folks who are more science-oriented, myself included, would be very comfortable saying that every single one of us is the universe in action. I am a living, conscious being because the exact and orderly laws that govern the universe permit life and consciousness to be. The starting point, principle. Life and consciousness evolve from that point, from those eternal and unchanging, exact and orderly laws. I don't think enough people in this world see themselves that way. It's one of the reasons why I think our message is so timeless and timely, important. We're here to help dismantle the destructive effects of dehumanizing religion. That word dismantle, we think of it as being destructive. What dismantle really means is to take the cover off of something, to see what's really underneath. We're here to dismantle the destructive effects of dehumanizing religion, and that alone isn't enough, because science and technology have to evolve as well. The earth isn't a resource to be exploited for profit, just like some other machine that we use for our own ends. Everyone has heard of the 7 wonders of the world, right? Pretty common, the 7 wonders of the world. Well, Mahatma Gandhi, who actually had a sense of humor, Mahatma Gandhi wrote about something he called the 7 blunders of the world. The 7 blunders of the world. The 7 social sins. Number 4 on his list of the 7 blunders of the world would be commerce without morality, which he defines as a way of life in which our nobler goals and aspirations are subsumed into the desire to produce and consume more without morality. And the other one, number 5, is science without humanity. Science without humanity is the result of focusing on remaking the world without the corresponding focus of remaking ourselves. If we don't work on ourselves in consciousness first, everything we try to do in the outer world is going to be utterly futile, because we will revert back to that default state. If we don't change our own consciousness, we revert back to the default state. The changes we make in the exterior are temporary, and there is no lasting change. There is no transformation. Transformation means a complete change. That's what it takes, is starting at the level of our own consciousness. Again, getting back to that power of God in action. The human being, the human mind, the human thought process is being part of that very power in action. Our goal in Unity is to make sure that the nobler goals and aspirations of humankind take precedence over that desire that we've been developing, that desire to produce and to consume more and more. We want to help humankind to evolve into an awareness of our true power, which includes great freedom and great responsibility, but not unlimited freedom and unlimited responsibility. The best way, I think, of summing all of that up comes from Eknath Easwaran, who was a student of Gandhi, and he distilled it into this one statement here. He said, "Lasting change happens when people see for themselves that a different way of life is more fulfilling than their present one. Our image of the human being, of ourselves, influences every aspect of our lives. The first step in creating a healthy, peaceful, post-industrial era is for a few of us to start basing our lives on a higher image of who we are and a deeper understanding of what we need for a satisfying life. All it takes is a few of us, for starters. Then it spreads if we're doing our work. So I'd like to offer this as a brief summation and an affirmation of what we're about in Unity. We can say Unity, offering a higher image of who we are and a deeper understanding of what we need for a satisfying life. Take that home and let's get it out there. See you next week.